She's been cursed at by Whoopi Goldberg, banned from MSNBC, which is a whole lot like being banned from The Sizzler, and been avoided by Matt Lauer as if her last name were Curry. She's also the author of the brand new best-selling book, Mugged, Racial Demagoguery from the 70s to Obama, Ann Coulter. Ann, thanks so much for stopping by.
Thanks for having me, John Phillips.
And before we get into the book, give me some of your thoughts on the presidential debate, the first one that we saw. But be sensitive to the fact that the Chevy Chase Police Department hasn't completed its welfare check on Chris Matthews yet, so be kind.
I must say, after the debate, I was transfixed by MSNBC. It was like watching the O.J. slow speed chase because I was waiting for an on-air suicide.
Well, the critics have been pretty harsh on them. I was just looking at some of the numbers of the reviews, and 67%, according to a CNN poll, said that Romney won. 25% said that Obama won. Those are numbers similar to the reviews that Freddie Got Fingered got when that movie came out. This was a disaster for Obama, wasn't it?
Yes, and mostly, I mean, it was a disaster for Obama. It's the first time he's actually had to respond to someone raising uncomfortable points for him. His entire life, he's been getting standing ovations wherever he goes. And, you know, he says at Occidental all he was doing was smoking pot, and then transfers to Columbia, and from Columbia to Harvard Law School, and he's president of the Harvard Law Review. He had been president for less than 2 weeks, I believe, when he won the Nobel Peace Prize. Debating Mitt Romney is not like walking onto the Letterman show. And it was a wonderful thing to see. I mean, it got so bad, you'll recall, that Obama didn't face any competition with the Republican nominee last time, John McCain. But during the primary debates with Hillary, she may have been tough, but the media, the moderators were so biased toward Obama that ended up in a Saturday Night Live sketch, you may recall, where they're asking Hillary complicated policy questions and then asking Obama if he needs another pillow. This time he had to face someone a lot smarter than he is, and Mitt Romney was magnificent, as I knew he would be.
Well, I love the excuses that are already starting to come out. Al Gore said it was the altitude that caused Obama to have a bad performance. And Michael Eric Dyson, who is the dinner theater version of Al Sharpton on MSNBC, he's Alpha when Wicked plays Bakersfield, says that it was white racism that caused all of this to happen, that caused this horrible debate performance. Let's go ahead and take a look at what he had to say on MSNBC.
Lest we forget this, lest we pretend that that doesn't make a difference, the specter hanging over his neck that I can't come off as too vigorous because then it looks like I'm being an angry black man. And because of the angry black man phenomena, Mitt Romney is able to be a vigorously engaged man who's able to play to his strengths.
He gets my stickers, Ann, for the best excuse.
I want to send him a thank you note right now because I've noticed the media seem to be dropping their racism charges since my book has come out, which is kind of the story of all of the stories I tell at the beginning. Well, actually, throughout the book, the claims of racism in American history, basically, from, you know, Reagan's Philadelphia speech to Kiko Garcia and Tawana Brawley. As soon as the truth comes out, liberals drop the example for, a few months, and then suddenly it's as if nobody knew what the truth was, and they just reel it back out again. And I mean, that's what charges of white racism are. They're like roaches. You shine a light on them, they disappear, but as soon as the light goes away, it comes back again. So I think merely the existence of my book has cut down, although the mainstream media is pretending this book doesn't exist. It does seem to be cutting down on the racism charges, because I think Michael Eric Dyson is the only one to make that charge about last night's debate.
Well, one of the offenders that you talk about extensively in your book is Chris Matthews. And it's funny that Michael Eric Dyson blames Obama's poor performance on white racism. And then Chris Matthews on the same network, MSNBC, said the problem with Obama's performance is he wasn't listening to enough white liberals. If he would just listen to white liberals and do what they say, everything would be fine. Let's watch Chris Matthews last night. This is after the pea soup scene from The Exorcist, where just his head spun around. So listen to this clip.
Where was Obama tonight? He should watch Well, not just hardball racers should watch you. It should watch the Reverend Al. He should watch Lawrence. He would learn something about this debate. There's a hot debate going on in this country. You know where it's being held? Here, on this network, is where we're having the debate.
Can you imagine if that was a commentator on Fox, Ann, where Bill O'Reilly, well, if he was would just listen to all of us white hosts on Fox, then he'd really know how to wrap this thing up.
No, that's a good point. But what I find strangest about it is the last place you will find a debate is on MSNBC. I mean, the reason half of MSNBC's audience are right-wingers like us, so that we can laugh at them, is that they will clip. They will edit video clips. They will lie about what someone said. They will make preposterous arguments. But it's okay because there isn't a conservative in the building. There isn't even a moderate Democrat in the building who can disagree with them as they spin their conspiracy theories. You know, my last book had a section on mob and groupthink, had a section on conspiracy theories, which are the province of the left. And boy, a lot of them came out of MSNBC, and there's no one there. I mean, they were continuing that kill him story, which is in both my last book and this book, that at a Sarah Palin rally in 2008, when she mentioned Barack Obama's name, there was one reporter in Scranton, Pennsylvania, claimed that he heard someone in the crowd yell out, "Kill him." And that went through the press like wildfire. But the jackass reporter who put it in his news story didn't realize that it would be fact-checked by the Secret Service. Secret Service takes claims like that very seriously. They had like a 2-week investigation, interviewed dozens of people. They had dozens of Secret Service officers and other law enforcement officers spread throughout the rally. No one else heard such a thing. No one had a tape recording of it or a camera video of it. It's weird how reporters never seem to have a tape recorder on the things they hear conservatives saying. And so, you know, conservatives and Republicans pointed out that turned out to be another hoax racism story, in as much as Barack Obama is black. And, you know, MSNBC waits a week and they start trotting it out again. Oh, and someone yelled, "Kill him," at a Sarah Palin rally at Obama's name. In fact, Obama raised it in a debate even after, according to Mark Hosenball of Newsweek, Obama knew it was a false story, and he still told a false racism story in a debate with McCain.
Well, and that seems to be why they've moved on to the dog whistle story, because they can't pin actually racist things on the Tea Party or on Republicans or conservatives or fill in the blank. Now it's when you use the word Chicago, and you chronicled some of them in your book and spent a lot of time talking about this. What other code words do they claim that we use that are really racist?
Basketball, the word "the," when Donald Trump said he had a great relationship with the blacks. Oh, hysteria ensued. After this book went to print, we got, actually just in the last few weeks, we had Lawrence O'Donnell claiming that a reference to Obama golfing was racist because it was reminiscent of Tiger Woods. First of all, golfing is probably the whitest sport in the universe other than polo. And other than Tiger Woods' marital problems, and I don't think anybody thinks Obama has marital problems other than after last night's debate. Everybody loves Tiger Woods. He's the most beloved sportsman in the universe. But the idea that the whitest sport, golf, I mean, that would have been a frat boy polo reference a few years ago. The idea that is now racist, I think, was Lawrence O'Donnell. It's like he's trapped in a North Korean prison and he was trying to signal to us, everyone at MSNBC is insane. Help me, help me.
Well, yeah, and it was just, I mean, they just outdid each other, just one after another last night. So Chris Matthews in particular is one person you spent a lot of time talking about in the book, because he's the one that really just hits this theme day after day more than the others, yet he doesn't practice what he preaches. You looked into his own personal life to find out if Chris Matthews was this freedom rider like he claims to be.
Yes, he knows no black people. Eugene Robinson does his show, but doesn't actually watch his show. No black people watch Hardball. He has no black neighbors, no black friends, no black employees. And I included a URL to his son's wedding photo in the New York Times, an article on the marriage rant. And you can see like 100 people in the church, not a black face among them. But he is now the spokesman for Black America, second only to the Jewish lesbian as the spokesman for Black America. Do Black people get a vote on this?
It's just like, it's funny that he does this because when Chris Matthews goes out and says that he's speaking on behalf of Black America, he goes out and he talks to African Americans in Africa, and they tell him that they're so happy that he's fighting the good fight for them. I mean, I think
he
he's just got to make this
that
up.
they're not, but they're not African Americans if they're living
no
in
kidding.
Zambia. And he actually said that. He launched a new racist word the day before my book came out, apartment.
Apartment is now
It's
racist. What about
Yes,
townhouse?
because
Is townhouse just quasi-racist, or?
only if Romney uses that word. Romney had said something about, he was talking about healthcare and something about, you know, an ambulance coming to your apartment if you have a heart attack. And because he said apartment and not house, Chris Matthews discerned that that was racist because Black people live in apartments. But I think if you were trying to indicate Black people, you'd say like housing project or the projects or, I don't know, the ghetto, if that's what you're talking about. I'm from New York. The richest people I know live in apartments. In fact, I'm pretty sure the richest people in America live in apartments.
Yeah, well, one of the other things they've just spent the last week going nuts over was this video that was unearthed by the Daily Caller that showed President Obama talking to a Black audience, and he pulled a Hillary Clinton when he did it. He lapsed into an Amos and Andy drawl. Let's go ahead and listen to a clip of the president speaking before this audience.
We have left the bullet in. Look at what happened in New Orleans and along the Gulf Coast when Katrina hit. People asked me whether they thought race was the reason the response was so slow. I said, well, no, this administration was colorblind in its incompetence.
And liberal politicians always go before Black audiences and do this, including white liberal politicians like Al Gore and Hillary Clinton. Yet they don't seem to do it for other groups. You don't see them going before Asian audiences and acting like there's some sort of Jerry Lewis album. It's just the Blacks that they do this for. It's got to be patronizing. There's got to be some people in the audience that just look at this and say, get off the stage, you clown.
Yes, and it's about as authentic having Obama speak in that voice as Hillary Clinton. He's from Hawaii. He's from Hawaii. He is not from the South. He's half Black. He was born in 1961. It really is shockingly insulting, but you know, as I describe in loving detail in my book, even though he's had this 902, you know, Beverly Hills 90210 existence, since he was a child by his own account, according to his autobiographies, he has just been dying to adopt the persona of an angry Black man, of you know, the invisible man, and yet, you know, anyone in that generation and younger, the only effect of going through life as a Black person would have is that doors would open for you that wouldn't open for you if you were white, that college admissions offers would be extended that wouldn't be extended to you if you were white. The idea that, you know, there is some anger over Jim Crow these people experience. Interestingly, Black people who actually did live through democratic Jim Crow laws, Condoleezza Rice, Clarence Thomas, certainly Thomas Sowell is of the generation when it was still around, they tend to be the least angry about it. It's the ones that are, you know, half white and raised in Hawaii that are the most angry.
Well, I got to tell you, I can't wait till he speaks before the Human Rights Campaign, because I can't wait to see his best Paul Lynde. I mean,
You are so right.
That's worth the price of admission right there. So one of the events that you chronicle in your book that's a big event in race relations is the O.J. Simpson verdict. Can you explain why you believe that's such a big thing?
Well, I run through at the beginning a whole series of vignettes, mostly criminal vignettes, where a Black criminal would always be assumed to be innocent by the mainstream media, and a cop would always be assumed to be guilty, or a white person who shot a Black person. Always white guilty, Black innocent, in just an utterly patronizing way. But it was tended to be local. It was a lot in places like New York City with no history of Jim Crow, but a lot of white liberal journalists anxious to be self-righteous about imaginary racism. And I think the world's changed at whatever it was. I think it was October 3rd, 10:03 in the morning, 1995, when the O.J. verdict was announced. And white America just said, that's it. The white guilt bank is shut down. Hope O.J. was worth it. And the liberal media, as I chronicle, continued to treat black people like children. But for the rest, for normal people, for the rest of America, that was it. And it was the best thing that ever happened to blacks in America. They were suddenly treated like adults. They weren't being coddled for everything they did. I mean, interestingly, right after the only felony conviction to come out of the O.J. trial, which was technically a double murder case, was the Mark Furman's conviction for felony perjury for having used the N-word 9.5 years earlier when he claimed he hadn't used it for 10 years. That was the only felony conviction to come out of the O.J. trial, and most of the editorials around the paper, around the country, were enraged and indignant that Furman did not get jail time. They directed all of their anger not at the double murderer, but at Mark Furman, one of the cops who collected evidence, but it was just falling on deaf ears after that, and that was it with white patronization of black people. And suddenly, as a result, you saw this flowering of interesting black spokesmen, black authors, black comedians. Suddenly, Jesse Jackson wasn't the only spokesman for Black America. You also had Republican policies that Republicans had wanted to put in effect for decades, but had been mau-maued against pursuing them, but with preposterous accusations of racism. Law and order policies and welfare reform policies, both of which were such a magnificent success that Bill Clinton started claiming credit for them. So I think we had about a dozen years of peace. Oh, and one other little factoid on the difference of America pre-O.J. verdict and post-O.J. verdict. When Jesse Jackson ran for president in 1984, he got 20% of the Democratic primary votes. When he ran again in 1988, he got 30% and nearly beat Michael Dukakis, though in his defense, he would have made a better president than Michael Dukakis would have. When Al Sharpton ran for president, post-O.J. verdict, he couldn't even get a majority of black votes in New York.
Well, I'll tell you what, the O.J. Simpson trial was also, an odd time for white liberals, too, because you started to see a lot of them break away from the orthodoxy that you'd seen before. That's when Tammy Bruce really started to convert from being a liberal. She was the president of Now, and she started coming over to the conservative side of the aisle. Gloria Allred was one of O.J. Simpson's fiercest critics. Bill Press, who was the chairman of the Democratic Party in California, also a big critic. And then you saw other people. You saw the Alan Combses and the Michael Moores of the world who insisted, to this day, I think both of them insist that O.J. Simpson was innocent. And I don't actually think that they believe that. I think that they're just saying that to say, I'm a bigger civil rights fan than you are. And it's kind of just a way for them to self-righteously wag their finger in our face. I don't think they believe it, do you?
No, that is so preposterous. I don't think any black person believes O.J. was innocent. They were ticked off. They thought, they'd gotten the short end of the stick for many years. This is how they'd get white America back, but it had gone on a little too long. And I mean, newspapers across the country, i.e. liberals, responded to that verdict while most of white America and some of black America stared slack-jawed at the verdict. Newspapers were all saying, well, of course, that was the right verdict. And the fact that Furman may have used the N-word, that does throw O.J.'s guilt into doubt. And we can't blame the jury here. No, because you could never, ever blame a black person or black people here, a majority black jury, for anything they did. It was treating black Americans like children. And that finally ended with the O.J. verdict. And unfortunately, and the point of this book is, the grand conclusion is, Obama brought it all back.
And one of the other old wives' tales that you try to debunk in the book is the Southern strategy theory, that all of these racist white senators and congressmen who were elected during the Jim Crow era just suddenly, just overnight, poof, they became Republicans. And poof, they became the base of the Republican Party. And it's funny that you mentioned that, because it's not just with the civil rights movement. We saw that happen here in California, where I'm sitting right now, on the issue of illegal immigration. The biggest critics of illegal immigration prior prior to the last maybe 25 years, were the labor unions. The labor unions didn't want illegal aliens coming into the country, including Cesar Chavez, because they thought that they were cutting down the wages of legal immigrants and people who were working jobs in the Central Valley. They were working labor jobs. And then suddenly, overnight, those same people were the ones that switched because they realized that if they legalized them and put them in the unions, they could be paying the bills for the unions, and they could be voters for the Democratic Party.
Right.
And it was those people that switched. It wasn't like suddenly the Republicans became the Democrats and the Democrats became the Republicans. It was a political calculation. And it seems like the same thing was true, as you wrote about in your book, in the South with the Civil Rights Movement. It wasn't the Republicans became racist. It was the Democrats decided to flip as a political opportunity.
Yes, though it's a little different because the labor unions were right when they were against illegal immigration, whereas Republicans were right when they were for civil rights, and they have always been for civil rights. It was always liberal Democrats who were the segregationists, the proponents of Jim Crow, the shelterers of the Ku Klux Klan, and the argument of the Southern strategy is that when the Democrats, as you say, at least some of them, gosh, not all of them, but one of them, LBJ, flipped for political purposes only, thanks to Republican efforts at promoting civil rights for blacks. You had more black people in the South. They were always voting in the North. But in the liberal Democratic South, blacks started voting more. And that's when LBJ, who had opposed the 1957 and 1960 Civil Rights Act and actually watered it down quite a bit, those were Eisenhower's bills, pushed through the Senate by Richard Nixon, his vice president. As soon as LBJ gets to be president, blacks were voting in large enough numbers that Democrats were going to have to abandon the segregationists or never win another national election. So out of political calculation, LBJ flips. He then allegedly made the statement, and this is based solely on the word of Bill Moyers, whom, as you may or may not know, was the one who was publicizing the Martin Luther King adultery tapes, sending them around to the press and giggling about them. That great civil rights hero.
And he's about to get defunded along with Big Bird.
That's right. He claims that LBJ said, with this 1964 Civil Rights Act, we've lost the South forever. Okay, first of all, I don't really believe he said it. It was invented by Bill Moyers, the one who sent around the tapes of Martin Luther King. Second of all, who cares if he said it? It's a self-serving statement by a politician. Someone who had no reason to invent a quote by LBJ was the steward on Air Force One, who claims that after the 1964 Civil Rights Act was signed, with more Republicans than Democrats voting for it, even when it was being pushed by a Democrat for the first time ever. LBJ said on Air Force One, he was laughing with a couple of Democratic senators saying, with this act, we'll have those N-words voting up for the Democrats for the next 200 years. That's seems more likely, and that is actually what happened in history. The business about the segregationists suddenly becoming Republicans is provably false. The key to it is liberal historians describe the South as if it's one state, one region. Republicans had been winning the outer southern states since the 1920s. That's Texas, Tennessee, Kentucky, West Virginia, North Carolina, Florida. Republicans, Warren Harding won a bunch of those states. Herbert Hoover won most of those states. Eisenhower won them in 2 elections. Nixon won them in 1960. And you will note all the years I just mentioned are long before Barry Goldwater's run in 1964. He voted against the Civil Rights Act purely for constitutional reasons. He had supported all the other civil rights laws, unlike the Democrat segregationists, but he did win the Dixiecrat states. And
That's
this
true.
continued. Goldwater got us nothing. We didn't win those states after the 64 election, the Dixiecrat states. We didn't start winning. In fact, even Ronald Reagan, in his landslide elections, did worse or lost the Dixiecrat states. Ronald Reagan. We did not win a plurality of seats for the House of Representatives in the South, in the entire South now, until 1994. Okay, at that point, the people who had voted for Strom Thurmond in 1948 or Barry Goldwater in 1964 had died off. And by the way, where were Republicans most popular? This is also documented in my book, with Southern college students. We got the young students. We didn't start winning the Dixiecrat states until the Dixiecrats died.
And we didn't win the state legislature until 2010. It took a very long time. The book is Mugged: Racial Demagoguery from the 70s to Obama, available at anncoulter.com. Ann, thanks so much for stopping by.
Thank you, John Phillips.
For PJTV, I'm John Phillips. Thanks for watching.